Good morning, everyone. We are joined today with a few folks from our community and April Wick from Resources for Independent Living to have a chat today about the Census 2020. Today is September 8th, 2020, and my name is Sonia Bingaman with the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. We are a federally and state-funded agency that looks into the community to see what's happening, see what the needs are, do capacity building, systemic change, and advocacy to help improve access to services in the community and reduce barriers to services in the community. And one thing we've been doing during COVID is these weekly chats, picking a lot of different topics and agencies and services, new regulations, and sharing information with whoever can join us, which in some cases has been people from around the state, as well as around our region, which is the 10 counties around Sacramento, which is Sacramento, Yolo, Yuba, Sutter, Colusa, Placer, Nevada, Alpine, Sierra, and El Dorado counties. So welcome to everyone who's joined us. We will be recording today's session as well as posting it on Facebook so that it can be shared. This is such an important topic and we want to make sure that everyone completes their census. It's very important, and we'll talk more about why it's important. Toward the end of our chat today, I will launch a poll just to see what you think about the training today. There'll be 2 questions and I'll read those for you. So if you can be prepared to answer those when we launch them, that'd be great. You're welcome to put a question in the chat box, or since it's a small group today, feel free to just unmute yourself and ask a question at any time. You can also raise your hand in the chat box, or probably have a little green button to raise your hand anytime you have a question. So feel free to do that. I would like to introduce our 2 guests today, Lisa Cooley, who is a self-advocate in the Sacramento area, involved with lots of committees from the state level to our local level. And she's also a member of our statewide self-advocacy network representing our region. So glad to have her on, as well as April Wick, who is the Executive Director of Resources for Independent Living. So thank you both for joining us, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to April to get started. Thank you so much, April.
Thank you, Sonia, and welcome to my co-host Lisa as well. This is going to be a really fun morning. I want to make sure that we're, keeping it interactive and intimate. I will be sharing a PowerPoint, but at any time I can stop for questions. And also, as Sonia said, feel free to put questions in the chat. If there is a question that I can't answer, then I will get back to the group. I'm starting to notice that as this census process winds down, a lot of the questions get really fun and interesting, and I've started to learn a lot. Just when I thought that I knew everything about the census, I just started to learn a lot about it. So so I am the Executive Director of Resources for Independent Living, and I'm also a partner with Pam Miller, who's on the call, with the YOLO Aging Disability Resource Connection in Yolo County, which provides no wrong door services for people with disabilities and older adults in Yolo County. So I'm glad to see Pam on the participant list. And Resources for Independent Living is a non-residential advocacy and resource center for people with disabilities and older adults. So, Lisa, can you tell me why it is important to be counted in the census, and what does the census mean for you?
It's important to be counted in the census because the census pays for everything: roads, healthcare, transportation, disability services. It's important for me to be counted because I'm a member of our community and I benefit from disability and other services in my community.
That's awesome, thank you. So I'm gonna get into that a little bit and give some examples of what the census pays for, as Lisa said. And Lisa, at any time in this, the Pam Miller on here is not that Pam Miller I thought, but that's okay. So but I still gave you a shout out anyway, and I'm sure you're a great person in your own right, other Pam Miller. So I am going to share my screen and have a conversation, and please at any point just let me know.
Step in.
Just step in and tell me what I need to do. Okay, I am going to find the button, hide the button here. There we go. There we go. All right, 2020 census, counting the disability community. So what is the census? So every 10 years, the U.S. Census Bureau conducts the census to determine the number of people living in the United States. It's required by law. It's in the U.S. Constitution. And what it does is it counts every person living in the United States, whether they're a citizen or not. So you could be a green card holder, undocumented, it doesn't matter. They're trying to count the number of humans that are in the United States as of April 1st. It's important to know that personal information is not cross-checked with any other government agencies. So there was a lot of fear, and I think there still is a lot of fear when there was a proposed citizenship question floated around a few months ago. A lot of people were scared. They thought, well, if there's a citizenship question, does that mean that I'm going to be deported, for example? And the answer is, first of all, there is no citizenship question on the census. That was struck down by the courts. And all of the information that you share is not cross-checked with other agencies. So for example, if you're worried about your benefits, your Social Security, or your status as a citizen or non-citizen, it has nothing to do with the census. So you don't have to fear that cross-checking. Also, all the U.S. Census employees that take your information, they swear a lifetime oath to protect your information, and there's huge penalties. They could spend up to 5 years in prison or be fined up to $250,000 if they violate that oath. And I have to tell you that I have had the opportunity over these last 18 months to meet a lot of the census workers that have sworn that oath, and they're just really wonderful people. A lot of the really just day-to-day rank and file government officials are people who are just trying to serve their country and are a part of the community, and they want to see their community counted. So I haven't seen any behavior that would concern me in meeting these people. Also, the results of the census is reported in statistical format only, and your specific census data that you share is actually protected for 70 years. It's kept confidential for 70 years, and that is also required by law. So let's talk about why do we have the census? Okay, so they decided to put it in the U.S. Constitution, but what does it matter? So it's vital information. It's used to reapportion congressional House of Representatives seats and determines how many number of seats each state gets. It's also used for redistricting. So in 1990, California actually lost a House seat. And every time you lose a seat, you're losing a voice in Congress that represents you, that represents your voice for your state at the national level. And as of about a week and a half ago, there was a worry that we would lose, we meaning the state of California, would lose between 1 to 2 seats. I think I'll get to this a little bit later, but basically the numbers are getting a little bit higher. The response rate is improving, so let's hope that we don't lose any seats, but there is a projection that we could lose as much as 2 and at least 1 if we don't step up our efforts in the next 3 weeks. Also, cities and counties rely on census data to plan where roads, schools, hospitals, and emergency services should be, and businesses decide where to locate offices, factories, and jobs. So, Lisa, is there anything else that I'm missing on this slide about why we have the census and what it's used for?
The census also decides how social service services get funded.
Awesome. So that is a perfect segue to this next slide. So it's also used to determine how much of over $675 billion in federal funding should go to different programs, including those that are important to people with disabilities. So as Lisa mentioned, Medicaid, $312 billion, Section 8, $16 billion. You know, these are huge amounts of money. Block grant, community mental health services, $457 million. And the independent living state grant, which our agency, RIL, receives $2 million. So these are not just, you know, piddly pennies. These are huge amounts of money. And, you know, I always tell people, you know, as advocates, we know that these programs are underfunded as it is. But if we don't get as much money as possible into the pot of potential funds, then we don't have.
Then our services don't get funded the way they should get funded.
Exactly. And also when you're having budget discussions with the state legislature and the governor, if there's not as much money allocated to these different programs to start with, it's hard to haggle over. It's hard to make that argument when there's cuts on the horizon. So it makes it a lot easier to go into, you know, budget discussions when there's as much money as possible to start with and for these programs. So this year is the first year that there are 4 ways to answer the census. There used to be only 3 ways. Does anyone know the 4th way? Pretend you don't see the screen. Lisa, what's the new way to answer the census?
The telephone.
That's one way. What's new from 10 years ago that we didn't know we had 10 years ago?
What did we have 10?
I'll give you a hint. You're on it right now. You're on
Cell phone.
You're on.
Online.
Well, yes, mobile. Online.
Online, yeah. Online.
So you can answer the census in 4 ways: online, mail, in person, or the phone. And I filled out my census online, and it took me less than 7 minutes to fill out. I timed myself. And we'll get a little bit, in a few moments, we'll get to how many questions are on it. Lisa, did you fill yours out? How did you fill yours out?
Online.
And how did it go?
It was very simple.
Yeah.
Theodore,
It's not.
Theodore, did you do yours?
Took no
Yes,
time.
I did mine online as well.
Great.
How did it go?
It went well. It took about less than 10 minutes.
Awesome. That's what I found to be true as well. So you could go to my2020census.gov and you can fill it out in English, Spanish, and 11 other languages. It also is accessible to screen readers as well. So if you're blind or low vision. You can also fill it out by mail. So if you probably a couple months ago, all of us received a postcard telling us how to fill out the census. And some select households also received the paper copy. Not everyone received the paper copy this year, but we all got a postcard at least. You can also fill it out in person. So starting last month, census takers, who are also called enumerators, started to knock on people's doors of those who have not responded. So they gave you a couple of chances to respond starting in March. And if you didn't respond by August, they started to come to people's doors. In fact, I just saw a census worker yesterday. So we're in a period called the NARFU. And I always joke, it's the non-response follow-up period, but I always joke that sounds like doesn't that sound, Lisa, like a planet from the Star Wars movies?
Sounds like an unknown planet or a disease.
Yeah.
Narfu.
That sounds even worse. I'm gonna just stick with my original imagery of the Star Wars planet instead of the disease part. But and it's important to know that originally the non-response period, meaning the time that people were going to spend coming to your door, was going to last through the end of October because of the pandemic. But it was decided that the NARFU period would end on September 30th. However, that has since been challenged in court. So we're just going to assume as people who are advocates trying to get people to fill it out, let's just assume that it ends on September 30th, just so that we make sure people are counted. And if we have more time, that's great. We'll share that information out. You can also, when the person comes to your door, you can also request that another person who communicates in ASL or another language come back. And you can also call the census number to verify their identity. The census worker who comes to your door will always have a badge that says U.S. Census Bureau on it. They'll always identify themselves as a census worker. They also will have an official business sticker in their car windshield, and they'll have a book bag that has U.S. Census on it, and they even have an insignia that says U.S. Census on their book bag and on their laptop, so they could be easily verified. So, and they'll never ask you for your social security number or anything. Not how much money is in your bank account. If it sounds fishy, it probably is. So you can definitely report that to your local law enforcement, and you don't have to open the door if you don't think that the person really does work for the U.S. Census. Okay. And like I said, there's over 11 languages that you can use to answer the census. So here, this is a screenshot of all the numbers that different languages can call. So if you want to save our federal census workers a walk in this ugly heat, and you want to save yourself having to get out of the shower to answer the door, just fill out your census online or over the phone after you get off of this call. All right. And so this is a slide with key dates. Obviously, even though it says April 1st is Census Day, that's just the Census Day is just kind of the date that they use to kind of be a reference point. So it doesn't just mean that the census ended on April 1st. It's still going on. It just means that it's the reference point that we use for how many people were in the U.S. as of that date. They just had to pick a random date to make sure that they knew what they were doing as a reference point. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the questions that are on the census. So they're going to ask you how many people were staying in your house, apartment, or mobile home as of April 1st, and who else was there. They're going to ask you if it's owned by you or someone in the home, does it have a loan or an equity loan on it? Is it owned by you or someone free and clear? Is it rented? Is it occupied rent-free? They do ask you for your telephone number, and that's just to cross-check and call you back if there's any inconsistencies. That's why they ask for your phone number. And they also want information for every person living there. So you should start by listing the person who is in charge of paying the rent or owns the residence, list them as person 1, and then go down the list and list each individual person's information. So, and I want to apologize. The next question is, what is the person's sex? So male or female. So I apologize if that offends anyone, because I know that that is not, as we know, the most accurate way of, defining the way people see themselves. That we now know that gender is fluid and not everybody identifies with the sex they were given at birth, and a lot of people don't identify as male or female. So that's another point of advocacy. Hopefully someday we'll be able to change the census questions to better reflect the community that it's asking the questions of. It also asks the age and date of birth, and it asks if they're of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin. And then it also asks what the person's race is. So it gives you a couple of examples: white, Black, African American, American Indian, Alaska Native. It asks if different Asian Chinese, Vietnamese, Native Hawaiian, etc., or other Asian, other Pacific Islander, or other. So just answer that the best way that you identify yourself. All right. So Lisa, or anyone else, let's open the floor up. What are some of the reasons that you think people with disabilities don't complete the census?
They've never been asked. They don't think it directly affects their life. They think it's complicated.
Yeah.
Or they're worried about the benefits they use to maintain their independence.
Yeah, they're worried that something will happen, that the information will be used against them. So those are really valid fears and based on probably lived experience, right? All of us have some kind of trauma involved with paperwork or working, you know, with government systems if we're a person with a disability. So that is completely understandable. And that's why education and outreach is so important. So all of you who are on this call, like Lisa and others, all of us can be trusted ambassadors where when we talk to our fellow peers with disabilities and we talk to our friends with disabilities, or we talk to our family members with or without disabilities, we can be that change and we can say, hey, I filled it out and nothing happened to me. And hey, you know those programs you depend on to live independently, those can be underfunded or go away if we don't fill out the census, you know, or think about the kind of community we want to live in. You know, it's like, I always say people with disabilities are everywhere. People with disabilities have kids that go to school or their kids themselves. People with disabilities go to the hospital, they travel down the road, they and us, we use all of the services that everybody else uses. So even if it's not disability related programming, all of these community services are things that we should care about as citizens. And we deserve to be counted. I mean, we are a part of this community and we deserve to be counted just like everybody else. So all of us can be that trusted ambassador. So if you want to post on your social media pages about the census, make sure you use the hashtag disabilitycounts2020 just so that all of the hashtags can combine into one giant awesome disability counts hashtag, and that people can see the power of our voice. And then if the last couple slides are just resources, I'm gonna actually go to one of them. Yes, I'm gonna go to the disabilitycounts.org, and I know that this is what I hate about Zoom because I have to share my screen again, but that's okay. I will do it really quickly and then I will stop because I want to interact with everyone. Can everybody see this is the Disability Counts 2020 website. So it's a fully accessible website. And if you go down here toward the end of the page, there's several census instructional videos. There's some in ASL and some in Spanish. The ASL ones are down at toward the middle here. So I'd encourage you to watch these videos before you fill out your census and just get a sense of how to fill it out and why it's important. So with that, does anyone have any questions for Lisa or myself? I see someone, Kadada, is that the way to pronounce your name?
Yes, hi. I just wanted to know if a copy of the slides have been made available, and if not, if we're able to get a copy of the slide via email.
Absolutely, I can share them with Sonia.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Everybody's a census expert now and is going to go into their community and rock the count. Yep. I see hands up. Okay.
Hi. Can you please share the how you doing? Can you please share the website that you just showed? so we can share something on Facebook?
You're on mute, April.
Yes,
Thank you.
it's disabilitycounts2020.org. So I will put that in the chat box. And that's a really great resource with a lot of plain language and fully accessible documents that you can put online. And also, if you go to the Sacramento Complete Count Committee or the YOLO Complete Count Committee, you can Google them. They have a lot of copy and paste graphics that, as long as you alt text them so that they're fully accessible to the blind, you can put them on Facebook. And if anyone has doesn't know how to do that, when you post a graphic onto Facebook, you click on the photo, and then this dialog box pops up and it says alt text. That is just another way to describe what's going on in the photo. So if pretend that I'm a photo right now, I would pretend I'm putting my awesome face on Facebook. I would say, you know, white woman with short hair wearing a olive green dress with the Golden Gate Bridge in the background, and that would be my alt text. And we always want to post graphics to make it fully accessible to people who are blind.
All right, Belle.
Anybody?
I was just going to say, I have a nice, simple one-pager with 10 facts about the census in English and Spanish. So I will share that out with you as well.
Thank you, Sonia.
Yeah, that'd be great if you can share. Yeah, we only have 3 weeks left, so it's really important we get as many people to complete the census as possible.
Yeah. Sacramento County, I was just telling Sonia before the recording started that we are at 72% self-response rate. So they track the self-response rate and the non-response follow-up rate separately, and then they aggregate them. And so hopefully it's getting a little bit higher, but if you just count the people who have just filled it out and not people who had people come to their door from the enumerators, we were at 72% of who could fill it out. So we're still at risk for losing at least one House seat at this point. So we wanna, it's not too late. So we wanna keep it going. And with the enumeration numbers added in, it means that we're being counted even higher. So also answer your door if you haven't filled it out. They're nice. I've met them. They're not bad.
I wanted to point out a couple questions that I know have come up in some of the trainings that I've been involved with and questions that I've had, and that is Theodore. A question,
Yes.
Theodore. So do you live on your own in an apartment?
Yes.
Okay, and so you knew that you needed to fill out the census because that's for your apartment, your address. Is that right?
Yes.
And did anybody
Yes.
help you to fill it out, or did you do it all by yourself?
I was able to do it by myself.
Great, great. So yeah, anyone who's living in an apartment or a house, and even folks maybe who have independent living skills or supported living assistance from the regional center, they could have their worker help them out with it. But it's based on your house, so we want to make sure that every person fills it out, especially if they're not living with their parents. If people are living with their parents, then the parents are probably filling it out and including them in the count, so that's fine because it's really for the whole residence. And then with care homes, correct me if I'm wrong, April, but the hope is that the care provider will fill out the census for everyone living in that home. So it doesn't matter if somebody has family, has parents outside the care home, the care provider should be filling it out because that's where those people lived on April 1st. So that's where they live, that's where the census should be counting them. Is that correct, April?
That's correct. And there should be a system in place for congregate settings. That's just a fancy word for when people are all living in group quarters. It's called group quarters. And there was a little worry that the group quarters system was not as robust this time around. So a lot of advocates, including myself and several others, worked with a lot of the group quarter participants to make sure that they knew what to ask of their group home leaders and instructors to self-advocate, like, hey, how come I haven't been asked? Or also we provided a lot of addresses to the Census Bureau that Alta helped us obtain, so that we could make sure that the non-response follow-up included group quarters. So I'm hoping that was impactful.
As well as people, maybe 3 people sharing an apartment, like let's say Theodore had roommates. You only have to fill out 1 census for everybody living in the apartment together. So one person could say, hey, I'm going to do it. I'm going to fill it out for everybody. And that's okay. Each person doesn't have to fill it out individually. So you can fill one out and list everybody living there. Like, for example, in my house, my mother lives in the back, but I told her I'm going to fill it out for everyone living here. And so she didn't have to fill it out separately. We have a question for you, April, about how the homeless are being counted.
That's a great question. So there is a team of enumerators or census takers who go out in September. There's a week in September that has been set aside for the homeless count, where Sacramento Steps Forward, which is the local nonprofit that receives all of the housing and urban development dollars, they will go out to the camps with a group of trained census workers to do the homeless count. Now, we all know that that's not a foolproof way to count the homeless, because you know, with the sweeps that are happening in the county right now, the homeless can be very transitory because they keep having to move. So it's not a foolproof way to do it, but that is the way that they're doing it. So what all
it's not an accurate count, but it's better than no count.
Better than no count, yeah. And what we yeah. So that is how they're doing it. But RIL, which is where I work, and a couple of other places that serve the homeless, are making sure that we go out. Like last week, we went out to a couple of camps and told people about the census and gave them a chance to fill it out. And what's really cool is most of them said that they already had filled it out, which was a great sign. We spoke to at least 90 people last week. So we're trying to get the word out. There's about 5,900 homeless people living in Sacramento County, according to the last PIT count, which is point in time count, where they go out and they do a one-day count of all the homeless. So there's almost 6,000 people who are homeless. So we gotta step that up for sure.
April, I have a question about, you know, the postcards originally were mailed out in early spring, like maybe February or March. And what if you forgot whether you fill it out or not, either the paper copy or whether you did it online or called? Is there a way to check if you've already done it? Can you call the main number and ask for confirmation whether you fill it out already?
You can call them and ask them. And if you're not sure or you don't get a direct answer, if you fill it out twice, you're not going to get in trouble. They'll just call you and ask you which form is the correct form that you want to count. Because some people, you know, sometimes the husband gets home early and wants to do it to tell the spouse or whatever, you know, that happens, or the roommate did it not knowing the other roommate did it. So you're not going to get in trouble if you fill it out by accident more than once, and it's better to be safe than sorry if you can't get through to the
I'm going to launch the poll right now, and then we'll have time for a couple more questions. So you should see on your screen right now something that says, did you learn something about the census? I'm going to, April, actually, let me stop for a second. Don't fill it out yet. April, I'm going to change your status for a second. Okay, I'm relaunching it. If you can fill out, the first question is, did you learn something about the Census 2020? And April, you should be able to fill it out now. And hopefully you learned something today. Let's see. And the second question is, are you satisfied with this activity, this training? Lisa, are you able to do this on your phone?
Yeah, I
Great. How about Theodore? Were you able to do this?
Yeah, I'm going to submit it now.
Okay, great. I know it's hard sometimes to do Zoom calls on your phone. Theodore, do you have a computer or a tablet that you're using?
I'm using my computer.
Okay, it looks great. I can see you really well.
I'm using my iMac.
Great. Okay, we've got 6 people, which makes sense. All right, I'm going to end the polling so we can continue. All right. All right, turning it back over to you, April.
Okay, any final questions? Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for taking the time today to learn about the census. And if you have any questions, Sonia knows how to reach me, and she also is very well versed in this topic as well. I encourage you to go to disabilitycounts2020.org, and also we'll share out all the slides. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you, Lisa, for co-hosting with me this morning.
thank you.
Thank
you
you.
all. Yeah, thank you. And I will be posting it on our Facebook page. So if you can go there and share out from there if you'd like, it'll be a recording of this session, so somebody could watch it and get their questions answered, as well as links that April shared in the PowerPoint that we will share out. April, if you want to just email that to me, I can share it with everyone
Will do.
who was on the call. So thank you all for joining us. And in 2 weeks, we are going to have our next Zoom chat, and that is on voting, which is a really important topic. A little bit complicated because there are so many more options for how to vote now, especially in Sacramento County and a few other counties around the state. So if you can join us, that would be great. And again, anyone who joins us becomes an ambassador for voting and can help other people understand what the options are. So thank you for signing up and joining us for our next Zoom chat, and that is September 22nd. So there won't be one next week. There is a council meeting next week that you're always all welcome to join. And we look forward to seeing you on the 22nd. So thank you all and have a great day. Thank you, April and Lisa.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.